Unfortunately, the default video settings on your iPhone will ruin your video if you don't change them before you start filming. Take it from someone who has been frustrated many times by washed out, overexposed footage, audio dropouts, and export glitches. But don't worry, I've suffered through it, so you don't have to. If you follow the steps I share in this video, not only will your iPhone footage look great, but you'll also have a much easier time editing it. Starting off with the most important, you gotta turn off HDR. Open up the settings app on your phone and scroll down until you find camera. Just keep scrolling, I promise you'll find it eventually. This is where you can find all of the settings that we're gonna tweak today. Tap on record video and then scroll down until you find HDR video. Make sure, like your life depends on it, that this is set to off. If you record in HDR, everything will seem normal when you're playing back the videos on your phone or even if you bring them into mobile editing apps. But if you bring these HDR clips into DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro, you'll see that the clips end up being really weird and washed out, like the colors don't look right at all. There are some fixes you can try for this, like converting your color space to Rec 709 using certain LUTs, or even converting the codec using something like Shutter Encoder, but honestly, it'll just never look quite the same as if you would have just filmed in non-HDR to begin with. You might also notice some funny glitches if you post HDR videos to your Instagram stories or to Reels. It's almost like the exposure gets turned down on any emojis that you add to your videos. So if you've ever been tapping through stories and you see that somebody's emojis, like the colors just kind of look off, it's probably because the video that they added them to is in HDR. Overall, the idea of HDR is that it's high dynamic range, right? It can preserve the highlights and the shadows and kind of give you more rich colors. And while that is a nice idea in theory, in practice, unfortunately, the editing applications that we use on our computers just can't handle this codec of Apple HDR footage. And so it ends up being more of a hassle than it's worth. So even if you stop watching the video right now, just promise me you'll turn off HDR. Trust me, it'll save you so much pain and suffering. While we're turning off annoying settings that are gonna ruin your footage, let's go ahead and change our format from high efficiency to most compatible. Just go back out to that main camera settings page and tap on formats. By default, this is gonna be set to high efficiency. And like I said, we're gonna switch it over to most compatible. I'll be honest, high efficiency does save space. It's designed to create smaller file sizes while still having good quality footage. Just take a look at these two clips that I filmed at the same time. They're both in 4K, 30 frames per second, both 30 seconds long. One of them is in high efficiency mode and one of them is in most compatible. The most compatible clip takes up 172 megabytes of space, while our high efficiency clip only uses 88 megabytes. Again, while this seems great in theory, in practice, I've noticed that when I film clips in high efficiency mode, it leads to a lot of glitches in both Premiere Pro and DaVinci Resolve. Things like lagging playback or even the audio dropping out, so I can't hear it when I'm editing, even though I know there's audio with the clip. What it comes down to is this HVEC codec that Apple uses on iPhone footage just isn't the most compatible with DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, editing software like that. You're much better off using the H.264 codec because you're just gonna not have any of those problems when you go to edit it. Honestly, this is not an issue that I came across when I was only creating short form content using iPhone footage. I found that the longer clips that you have in high efficiency mode, the more likely you are to deal with these glitches. If you only have like 5 to 30 second clips, it probably won't become a problem for you. But if you're sitting down to film like a 20-minute YouTube video on your iPhone, you're gonna be much better off doing it in most compatible mode because then you won't run into these issues. The final setting you're gonna wanna turn off to avoid any of these weird editing glitches is auto frames per second. If you leave this on, especially with longer clips, it can lead to lagging when editing and even your audio becoming out of sync with your video. So go back to record video and scroll down to auto frames per second and turn it off. Okay, and here's why this is important. When you're editing in a 30 frames per second timeline, your editing software expects your clips to be 30 frames per second, or at the very least, it expects one clip to be 1 frame rate. The thing that iPhones are doing when you leave on auto frames per second is it's trying to switch the frame rate to be more ideal for your lighting conditions. So if you're trying to film in 30 frames per second, but it's really dark out, your iPhone will automatically switch to 24 frames per second to try to let some more light onto the sensor and get a brighter image. But if you have a video clip that's alternating frame rates, if it's going between 30 frames per second and 24 frames per second, Premiere Pro or Resolve just aren't really gonna like that. If all this feels really technical for you, don't worry about it, just trust trust me, turn it off and you'll have less glitches when you're editing. All right, next up, let's get our quality locked in. So once again, we're gonna go back out to those main camera settings and you're gonna tap on record video. I'm gonna suggest that you record all of your standard clips at 4K 30 frames per second. Why? Well, 30 frames per second is the frame rate that you're probably gonna want your final video to be. It's pretty standard. It's what they use on TV shows. It's what most YouTube videos are. And it looks pretty similar to like real life speed. It mimics the motion blur that you would see with your eyes. If you wanna film something in slow-mo, I would recommend setting your slow-mo settings to 1080p at 120 frames per second. I suggest recording in 4K because it looks really crisp. It's the highest quality that you can do on an iPhone. And it also means that if you end up making your final video in 1080p, you can actually crop in your footage up to 2x zoom and still maintain all the quality. So it gives you more flexibility. This next setting I only learned about recently, but it is so convenient. Back in the main camera settings, scroll down to preserve settings. You're gonna wanna turn on camera mode and turn on creative controls. This means that whatever the last settings that you chose in the camera app are, it will remember them and go back to them the next time you unlock your phone. So if you're always filming in video, it's not gonna constantly default back to photo as it would if you didn't turn these settings on. Okay, so I know this has been all about video settings, but I have another iPhone tip that I want to share with you that I know is gonna be helpful to content creators. So now that you've turned on preserve settings and creative controls, you kind of unlock this ability. Next up, you're gonna open up your camera app, make sure that you're in photo mode, and then you're gonna tap on this little arrow at the top center of the screen to bring up some additional settings. At the bottom here, you're gonna tap on the little circle that says 4:3. This is the default size for photos taken on an iPhone. However, I would recommend selecting 16:9, and then you can collapse that menu again, and you'll see that your photo is now in vertical mode. It's the same aspect ratio as an Instagram story. I found this so useful because most of the time when I'm taking photos, I'm kind of intending them to be for Instagram stories anyway. But even if I wasn't, don't worry. Your iPhone does this really cool thing where if you go into your camera roll, you open up one of these photos that you've taken in 16:9 mode, tap on edit, and then crop. And you can see here that you can quickly change it back to that 4:3 aspect ratio, because really when you took that photo in 16:9, your phone was secretly also taking a 4:3 image, which you can now revert to if you want. So it's actually capturing that extra piece on the sides. I just personally find this more convenient than shooting things in 4:3 and then sizing them up to fit on an Instagram story, because you can frame it to fit in a vertical frame. And then if you ever want more space on the sides, it's really easy to revert back to that. Finally, when you're recording videos with your iPhone, I'm gonna highly encourage you to always film using the back cameras. They really are a lot better than the selfie camera. Just take a look at these two examples in the exact same lighting scenario, filmed, one with the selfie camera and one with the 1x zoom lens on the back of my phone. I know it's tough to frame things when you can't see what you're doing, so if you want, you can use the camera app on an Apple Watch, if you have one, to be able to see the framing of your phone's camera from your wrist. Or you could always mirror your phone's display to a MacBook so that you can kind of see what's going on your camera without having to see your phone's screen. Once you have things framed up and you know it's looking okay, then I would really recommend turn off that extra monitor and just look into these lenses. One of the downsides of filming with the selfie camera is you can tell when people are recording that they're just looking at themselves in the screen, and that's not nearly as engaging as just looking into the lens and making eye contact with your viewer. All right, now you are ready to record high quality videos using just your iPhone without all of the editing headaches. By the way, if you want help editing your YouTube videos, my editing team over at Creatorly Media is currently taking on new clients for editing vlogs, regular YouTube videos, video podcasts. So you can check out all the details about that at creatorlymedia.com. Fun fact, Sharu from the Creatorly Media team edited this video. So if you want to have video edits that look like mine, we can do that for you. The link's in the description below as well. As always, I hope that you are having adventures and following your dreams, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.